The phone rang just after sunrise, shattering the stillness of Silver Hollow Wildlife Center. Dr. Evelyn Hartley paused mid-step in the hallway, a mug of lukewarm coffee in her hand. Calls this early were never good news. Before we dive into the story, please leave a comment below to let me know where in the world you're watching from today. She picked up on the second ring. "Evelyn," came the voice of Park Ranger Cooper from the Provincial Border Patrol. It was tight with urgency. "We've got a situation. 3 bobcat cubs, barely 4 weeks old, found in the back of a pickup outside a truck stop, smuggled, likely headed for the States." Evelyn's breath caught. The mother? Didn't make it. She was severely dehydrated, injured, maybe from a trap. "We did what we could." His voice softened. "We need you. They're in rough shape." "I'll prep the clinic," she said, already moving. By the time the ranger's van arrived an hour later, Evelyn and her 23-year-old niece, Maya Langston, were waiting in the intake bay of the wildlife clinic. The air was heavy with antiseptic and tension. Evelyn had been doing this work for over 3 decades, but orphaned cubs, especially ones this young, were always a gamble. The ranger gently opened a transport crate, revealing 3 tiny bobcat cubs curled together like frightened shadows. Their fur was patchy, bellies sunken, eyes clouded with confusion and fear. Maya leaned in. "They're just babies." The smallest cub let out a rasping mewl, barely a sound, more a cry of emptiness than pain. She had a white patch on her left ear, stark against the dusty tan of her coat. Evelyn's hands, weathered but gentle, reached in with a towel. The cub hissed feebly, but didn't resist. "We'll call her Pebble," Maya whispered. "She's tiny, but she's holding on." They moved the cubs into a warmed enclosure lined with fleece and heating pads. Despite the warmth, they huddled in the corner, trembling and still. Evelyn had seen this before, trauma so deep it erased survival instincts. Over the next 24 hours, she tried everything: bottle feeding, formula warmed to exact temperatures, syringes, gentle stroking, classical music, silence. Nothing worked. The cubs turned their heads away from nourishment, flinched from human contact, and whimpered in their sleep. On the second night, one of the males, Sage, seized violently after a feeding attempt and had to be sedated. "They're shutting down," Evelyn admitted grimly to Maya, rubbing her temples. Maya, sitting on a stool beside the enclosure, looked at her aunt. "We need to try something different, something they haven't seen before." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Maya hesitated, then said, "What about Luna?" Evelyn blinked. "The dog?" "She's just weaned her pups. She's still lactating a bit. She's calm, maternal. And they don't trust us. But maybe they'd trust another animal." The older woman stared at her niece as the idea churned in her mind. "That's not just unconventional, Maya. That's risky. These are wild predators. She's a dog. A dog who was once abandoned. Who knows what it's like to be alone?" It was the truth that cut deepest. Luna had come to the center during the harsh winter, a golden-colored mutt found half buried in snow by hikers, belly heavy with pups. She had given birth to 6 healthy puppies in the sanctuary clinic, raised them with tender care, and watched each one be adopted. Luna stayed, her gentle nature a balm to injured foxes, owls, even the grumpy porcupine in rehab. "She's not trained for this," Evelyn said softly. "And what if the cubs lash out?" "And what if they die?" Maya replied. Evelyn looked through the observation window at the 3 diminishing balls of fluff. Pebble lay still, breathing shallow, eyes barely open. Sage whimpered now and then. Timber hadn't moved in hours. A memory surfaced, her old mentor, Dr. Clarkson, had once said, "Nature's greatest miracles begin when you stop following the manual." She exhaled. "Bring Luna in, but we do this on my terms." 15 minutes later, Luna padded softly into the adjacent room, led by Maya. The dog's ears pricked forward as she caught scent of the cubs. Her tail wagged slowly, uncertainly. Evelyn sat on the floor, cradling Pebble in a towel. The kitten's head lolled, eyes half closed. "Easy, girl," Evelyn murmured. "This is Pebble. She's just a baby." Luna stepped closer, nose twitching. She sniffed the air, then the kitten, pausing with uncanny delicacy. And then, to everyone's astonishment, she licked Pebble's forehead. Once, then again, slowly, gently. Pebble stirred. She didn't hiss. She didn't flinch. Instead, she burrowed deeper into the towel, inching toward the warmth of Luna's chest. Evelyn froze, afraid to breathe. Then Maya whispered, "Aunt Ev." Look, Pebble's tiny paws reached out, touching Luna's leg. A rasping purr escaped her mouth. The dam broke. Evelyn set Pebble down on the floor beside Luna. The dog lay down immediately, curling around the kitten like a mother reclaiming her child. Pebble nestled into the soft fur, her breathing easing. "Bring the boys," Evelyn whispered. Sage was next, then Timber. Each one hissed once, reflex more than threat, then melted into Luna's side like they'd belonged there all along. Within the hour, all 3 cubs were asleep, huddled against their new surrogate mother. Maya wiped her eyes. Evelyn didn't speak. She just reached out and ran her fingers through Luna's golden fur. Outside, the wind moved gently through the pines. And in that quiet, fragile warmth, the first seed of an impossible bond took root. In the days that followed, the recovery room at Silver Hollow took on a new rhythm, one not led by humans, but by the soft breathing and steady heartbeat of a dog. Luna had settled into her new role with a quiet dignity that surprised even Evelyn. Every morning, Evelyn would find the 3 cubs curled against her warm body, their small chests rising and falling in sync with hers. Pebble always nestled closest to Luna's neck. Sage and Timber preferred her side, sometimes draped across her like living scarves. And Luna, for her part, never moved until they woke on their own. The sanctuary staff watched in awe as life returned to the orphans. Pebble began to explore first, her steps still wobbly, but her eyes more alert. Sage soon followed, showing curiosity about the shadows and rustling leaves outside the observation window. Timber, ever cautious, took his time, but even he began to bat at toys Maya placed nearby. More astonishing than their physical progress was the emotional change. The blank, fearful stares were replaced by blinking curiosity. Pebble purred when Luna licked her ears. Timber nuzzled her chest after every nap. It was undeniable. They saw her as their mother. Maya was the first to capture the moment on video, a tiny paw reaching up to tap Luna's nose, followed by a delighted squeak and a wagging tail thump. The footage went viral when posted on the sanctuary's social page, flooding them with messages from around the world. "I've never seen anything like it," one wildlife vet in Oregon wrote. "This isn't just maternal behavior. This is cross-species attachment at a neurological level." Evelyn remained grounded, though visibly moved. They're alive. That's all that matters right now. But not everyone was completely reassured. Dr. Felix Rivera, the sanctuary's consulting wildlife veterinarian, visited the following week. After watching the cubs for an afternoon, he sat with Evelyn in her office, his tone measured. "They're thriving, no doubt," he said. "Good weight, healthy coats, no signs of dehydration or malnutrition." "But," Evelyn asked, already sensing the hesitation, The bond with the dog, it's strong, perhaps too strong. At some point, they'll need to live like wild bobcats. That means minimal dependence on domestic animals or humans. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, rubbing the bridge of her nose. You think they're at risk of imprinting on her? Not exactly, he said. They're not mimicking her behaviors. They still stalk, they still pounce. Their instincts are intact. But emotional dependency, that could delay their transition to independence. Evelyn glanced at the monitors showing a live feed from the enclosure. Luna was curled up while Sage stalked his sister's tail. Pebble pounced, missed, and tumbled into Timber. All three froze as Luna gave a soft, corrective chuff. Then they resumed their play. Looks pretty wild to me, Evelyn murmured. Still, the concern lingered. Then, as if summoned by the universe, an email arrived from the Summit Ridge Wildlife Preserve in Colorado. Known for its advanced bobcat habitat and rehabilitation program, the preserve expressed interest in adopting the trio for long-term monitored release training. The catch? Only the cubs. No Luna? Maya asked, brows furrowing as she read the message aloud. They want them to bond with wild mentors. Controlled interaction with adult bobcats, Evelyn replied. Makes sense from a scientific standpoint. Maya didn't answer. She just turned to look at Luna, who was nudging Timber toward his food dish with her nose. For 2 days, Evelyn wrestled with the decision. It would be irresponsible not to consider the preserve. It was exactly the kind of opportunity she'd prayed for. But the image of those cubs crying out if Luna disappeared haunted her. On the 3rd day, she called the preserve. "Let me propose something," she said to the director. "What if Luna came too?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The eventual reply came not in words, but in a Zoom call with a woman named Jordan Rivers, a senior wildlife caretaker at Summit Ridge. "I've read the case reports, seen the videos," Jordan said. "We've never tried anything like this, but we'd be willing. Luna could live with me. I'm on site full-time. She'd get proper care and structured access to the cubs, supervised visits, gradually reduced over time." Evelyn stared at the screen. Jordan had calm eyes, sure hands, the kind of presence Luna would trust. "It's a compromise," Jordan added, "but it might be the bridge they need." That night, Evelyn walked to the enclosure alone. The air was crisp with early fall. Inside, Luna was surrounded by her not-quite kittens. Sage rolled lazily onto his back. Pebble was grooming Timber's ears. "You saved them," Evelyn whispered to the dog. "But maybe now, someone else has to teach them to be what they were meant to be." Luna looked up, her eyes shining in the moonlight. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the weight behind them. The decision was made. The next week was filled with preparations, vaccinations, travel crates, transfer paperwork, emotional goodbyes. On the morning of departure, Evelyn and Maya loaded Luna and the 3 bobcats into the center's specialized van and began the drive south to Colorado. Luna was uncharacteristically quiet, curled near the crates, her nose occasionally bumping against the bars. Hours passed. Mountains rose in the distance. By the time they reached the preserve, the sun was dipping behind the peaks. Summit Ridge was everything the brochure promised. Acres of natural terrain, climbing platforms, observation towers. A wild haven. Jordan greeted them personally, kneeling to greet Luna first. "You're not just a guest," she said softly to the dog. "You're family." They introduced the cubs slowly, letting them explore the new space with Luna at their side. She guided them cautiously, letting them take the lead. Pebble darted under a log. Timber sniffed a hollow stump. Sage stared wide-eyed at the towering pines. It wasn't instant, but it wasn't a disaster either. By the end of the day, the cubs were tired, curled in a pile near a boulder. Luna lay nearby, not touching, but watching. When it was time for her to follow Jordan to her new home, a cozy cabin a short walk from the enclosure, Luna paused, looking back once, then trotted beside her new caretaker. The cubs didn't cry. They lifted their heads, watched her go, and then lay back down. "I think they know," Maya whispered, "that she's not gone, just nearby." Evelyn nodded, her chest tight. That's how real mothers do it. They let go when the time is right. The moon rose over the preserve, casting silver light on pine needles and fir. Wild and domestic had taken their first steps toward the future, apart, but never truly separated. At first, it seemed everything would go smoothly. The Bobcat cubs, Pebble, Timber, and Sage, adjusted remarkably well to the open forest enclosure at Summit Ridge Wildlife Preserve. The space was vast, a 3-acre slice of pine woodland, complete with rocky outcroppings, hollow logs, and elevated platforms. Here, under the watchful eyes of the preserve staff, the cubs were supposed to learn what it meant to be wild. For the first 2 weeks, Luna visited them every morning and again before dusk. These supervised sessions were calm, loving, and structured. Luna would lie at the base of a tree while the cubs leapt from branches, play-fought over sticks, or crouched in the underbrush pretending to stalk her tail. Jordan Rivers, who had quickly become Luna's trusted new caretaker, described these moments as something out of a fairy tale. "They don't act like pets," she told Evelyn during a weekly update call. "They stalk, they ambush, they stay alert to smells and sounds. But when Luna shows up, they melt. It's like she flips a switch in them. Play becomes comfort. Comfort becomes rest." "They trust her," Evelyn replied softly. "They don't just love her. She anchors them." That's what made the next step so difficult. By the 3rd week, the staff initiated the transition phase, reducing Luna's time with the cubs to help them develop independence. First, she was kept away for a single morning, then a full day, then 2. The results were immediate and devastating. Without Luna, Pebble began pacing the enclosure restlessly. Timber, who had always been the most reserved, started refusing food again. Sage, typically the boldest, scratched at the door and cried out in high-pitched yowls that echoed across the pine hills. Worse still, Luna was no better. From Jordan's cabin, she would whine all night, scratching at the door, occasionally letting out a mournful howl. Her appetite dwindled. Her energy dropped. On day 4, Evelyn received a call from Jordan. "This isn't working," Jordan said. "I know we're trying to do what's best, but the stress is too high, on all of them." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Bring Luna back in, right now. We'll try another way." The reunion was something Jordan would never forget. The moment Luna entered the enclosure, all 3 bobcats came sprinting toward her, their paws kicking up leaves, their bodies humming with relief. They circled her in unison, rubbing against her fur, emitting a thunderous chorus of purrs. Luna lowered herself to the ground, allowing them to crawl on top of her. She licked each of them in turn, one by one, as if counting her cubs. Jordan stood silently at the gate, blinking back tears. Later that evening, she called Evelyn again. "You were right," she said. "They're not ready. And maybe we're not the ones to decide when they are." Over the next 2 weeks, the staff tried new separation strategies: short, daily separations, visual access through a mesh barrier. Luna, living in the adjacent enclosure where the cubs could see and smell her, but not interact. none of it worked. Pebble began calling through the night again, perching on the tallest log to scan for her surrogate mother. Sage became destructive, tearing up enrichment items and clawing bark from trees. Timber withdrew, barely engaging at all. Luna, meanwhile, would lie beside the separation fence for hours, her eyes never leaving the cubs. Dr. Rivera visited from British Columbia to observe firsthand. "I've worked with dozens of bobcat cubs over my career," he told Jordan. "I've never seen this level of emotional interdependence, especially not with a domestic species." "Is it dangerous?" Jordan asked. "Not physically, but it complicates release plans. These cats may never be fully wild. The risk of dependency is real. The deeper question is, what kind of life are we preparing them for?" Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "One where they feel safe." The preserve's board of directors convened an emergency meeting. Evelyn joined remotely. So did Maya, now back at university, but still emotionally invested. "I know this was never supposed to happen," Maya said during the call. "But what if it was supposed to? Not because it fits our protocols, but because it's working." An unexpected voice chimed in. Thomas Wilkes, head zoologist for the preserve. "I've reviewed the footage, the notes, the health reports. These bobcats are strong, healthy, and exhibiting wild behavior because of this unusual upbringing, not in spite of it." He paused. "And frankly, the trauma they endured before rescue might have killed them, had Luna not stepped in. She didn't tame them. She saved them." There was a long silence on the call. Then the board director asked quietly, "What are you proposing?" Wilkes leaned forward. "We stop trying to break the bond. Instead, we work with it. We allow Luna structured access. We let the cubs grow out of the dependency at their own pace. When they're ready, they'll tell us." Evelyn felt a lump rise in her throat. After all her years in the field, she had never seen a plan so unorthodox, and yet so profoundly rooted in truth. "You'll have my full support," she said. And just like that, the cubs' future changed course. That evening, Luna returned to full access with the trio, but under a new program: gradual autonomy through familiar support. Every day, the cubs were encouraged to spend more time exploring independently, following scent trails, climbing, observing from a distance. But Luna remained within reach, always there when they needed her. To everyone's surprise, the cubs responded. The relief of reunion didn't bring dependency, it brought confidence. They ventured farther, played harder, and returned less often, but still with affection. Jordan noticed first. "They're growing up," she told Evelyn one day, smiling as she watched Pebble climb to the highest branch without looking back for Luna. "But they're not forgetting who kept them alive." As fall deepened into winter, the preserve braced for snow. The cubs, now 7 months old, had shed much of their baby fat and now looked sleek, strong, and capable. But no one was prepared for what would happen next. The first signs were subtle. Timber, usually the first to leap from the high branch when Luna approached, remained curled in the shaded corner of the enclosure. At first, the staff assumed it was the cold snap. The early snowfall had arrived fast, blanketing Summit Ridge Wildlife Preserve in soft white, muting the pine forest to a hush. But by the second day, Timber hadn't touched his food. His eyes were dull, and when Jordan approached with fresh rabbit meat, he turned his head away. "Maybe it's a bug," she told the team, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Let's keep him warm, hydrated, and watchful." By day 3, he was worse. He refused water. His breathing grew shallow and erratic. He dragged his limbs rather than walked. The vibrant, alert bobcat who once leapt effortlessly from log to ledge now lay motionless in the leaves, his fur matted with frost. Jordan called Evelyn that evening. "He's crashing," she said, voice low and tight. "We've moved him to the quarantine room in the vet wing. Dr. Mendez suspects a bacterial infection, possibly contracted from a wild prey carcass." Evelyn, now 60 and technically retired, didn't hesitate. "I'm coming," she said, "and bring Luna in to see him. She needs to be there." Jordan paused. "You really think—" "Yes," Evelyn interrupted. "If he won't let anyone near him, she might be our only shot." The next morning, Evelyn arrived at the preserve after an 8-hour overnight drive, a thermos of cold coffee beside her, and Luna curled up quietly in the passenger seat. The dog had sensed something was wrong from the moment they left British Columbia. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. She sat alert, facing forward, ears twitching with every bump in the road. When they pulled into the preserve, Jordan was waiting. "He's worse," she said. "No food, no water. He growls when approached. We can't sedate him again. He's too weak." Luna trotted beside them through the snow-dusted pathways to the veterinary building. Her pace picked up as they neared the door. She let out a low whine that echoed through the hallway. Through the observation window, Timber was a shadow of himself, curled in a tight ball, ribs visible under his pelt, flanks rising with effort. His golden eyes blinked slowly, but didn't focus. Evelyn's hand tightened on Luna's harness. "We'll go in together," she told the vet team. "Let her do what we can't." Inside the quarantine room, the air was thick with antiseptic and silence. Luna moved slowly, sensing the tension. She padded toward Timber, nose twitching, tail held low. Timber didn't react at first. Then, a faint sound, somewhere between a rasp and a chuff, escaped his throat. Luna whimpered softly in reply and lay down beside him, her nose brushing his side. She began to lick his ears and forehead gently, methodically, just as she had when he was a helpless kitten. Everyone in the room went still. Timber's muscles twitched. Then, slowly, painfully, he lifted his head. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in days, something flickered in them. Recognition, relief, love. "He sees her," whispered Dr. Mendez. Evelyn stepped forward with a small dish of broth laced with dissolved antibiotics. "If he refuses this, we're out of options," she murmured. As she set the bowl near Timber's paws, Luna gently nudged his face toward it with her nose. Timber blinked. Then, almost imperceptibly, he shifted forward. His tongue flicked. Once, then again. Evelyn let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I'll be damned," Dr. Mendez whispered. For the next 72 hours, Luna never left his side. She lay curled around him, warming his fragile body, licking his face every hour, encouraging him to sip broth, then softened food, then water. When his siblings, Pebble and Sage, were allowed to visit briefly, they too showed signs of worry, nudging Timber, curling close, grooming him like Luna had taught them. Evelyn watched through the glass with tears in her eyes. This wasn't a recovery driven by medicine alone. This was something deeper, a restoration of the will to live. Love, memory, connection, forces no antibiotic could replicate. On the 5th day, Timber stood on shaky legs and walked a full circle around the room, Luna trotting slowly beside him. By the 7th, he was climbing again. By the 10th, he was ready to return to the habitat. "I think she saved his life," Dr. Mendez said to Evelyn as they observed Timber reuniting with his siblings under the soft light of morning. "She saved it twice," Evelyn corrected gently. Once as a baby, once as a grown wildcat. That afternoon, Jordan proposed something bold. Let Luna go with him, just for the reintroduction. She'll help ease the transition. The preserve director approved it. They opened the gate, and Timber stepped out first, his coat gleaming, his step sure again. Pebble and Sage rushed forward, surrounding him with chirps and soft headbutts. The family was whole. Then Luna stepped in. The scene was quiet, almost reverent. The three bobcats circled her, purring, rubbing against her sides, tails upright in greeting. She licked each one once, then lay down as she had always done, allowing them to gather close, just as they had when they were small. Visitors watched in silence. Rangers blinked away tears. Wild and domestic, predator and pet, mother and children. No lines between them, no boundaries left to explain. Evelyn, standing beside Maya, who had flown in upon hearing of Timber's illness, whispered, This is why we do the work." Maya nodded. Not for data, not for glory. For moments like this, spring returned to Summit Ridge in a gentle burst of color. Snow melted from the tree branches, revealing mossy trunks and budding wildflowers. The crisp mountain air held the smell of new life. For most animals, it was the season of separation, when young ones left the safety of mothers to seek their place in the wild. But for Pebble, Sage, and Timber, the story was more complicated. Now, nearly a year old, they were no longer helpless cubs. They had grown into striking young bobcats, sleek, powerful, and alert. Pebble was agile and precise, often perched high in the canopy, with eyes scanning the forest floor. Sage had become the dominant male, bold and playful. Timber, once so fragile, now moved with quiet confidence, his golden eyes sharp and steady. They spent their days hunting, climbing, and observing, every movement wild, every muscle tuned to survival. But every evening, as the sun dropped behind the Rockies and shadows stretched long over their enclosure, all three still returned to a familiar place, the fence that bordered Luna's path. She always came. Still living with Jordan, Luna had adapted to a new rhythm, domestic life inside the cabin, and structured, supervised visits to the bobcat's habitat each afternoon. No longer their full-time guardian, she had become something else, a constant presence, a friend, a symbol of safety. She doesn't mother them anymore, Jordan noted during a call with Evelyn. She watches, she acknowledges. Sometimes they play, sometimes they just lie nearby, but they don't cling. They've grown, Evelyn replied, because she gave them permission to. That spring, the sanctuary and the preserve published a joint report on the case, Cross-Species Attachment in Orphaned Lynx Rufus, the Luna Protocol. The story made its way into wildlife journals, veterinary conferences, and even children's books. Donations flooded in. So did questions. Can we replicate this? Should we? Was this an anomaly or a door? Evelyn lectured often in those months, her silver hair tied back as always, her tone soft but steady. You don't plan for miracles, she told young students at the University of Calgary. You recognize them when they happen, and you protect them. But even as Luna's story spread, something else was changing. Sage began spending more time alone. His nightly visits to the fence grew shorter. Pebble began choosing to sleep under the stars rather than near the familiar log where Luna used to rest. Timber, always the gentlest, still approached her with soft chirps, but even he no longer lingered. "They're detaching," Jordan observed one afternoon as she and Evelyn watched from the observation deck. "On their own terms." Luna seemed to sense it too. She no longer whined at the gate when visits ended. She accepted the distance with grace, as if understanding that she had done her part. And now, it was time to step back. By early summer, the staff made a decision. The Bobcats would stay at Summit Ridge permanently, not as exhibit animals, but as wild residents in a protected ecosystem. They would live free within the preserve's largest habitat, 100 acres of mixed woodland, no public access, minimal human contact. They'll never be fully releasable, Dr. Rivera noted, but they're no longer dependent. They've become what we hoped, wild but whole. On the morning of their transfer to the protected zone, the team gathered quietly. Jordan opened the gate, and the 3 Bobcats trotted into the tree line without hesitation. They didn't look back. Evelyn stood beside Luna, her hand resting on the dog's head. "You gave them their wild back," she whispered. That evening, Luna walked along the fence line one last time. She sniffed at the grass, listened to the wind rustling in the trees, then turned and walked back to Jordan's cabin. She never cried. She simply let go. 18 months later, a call came unexpectedly. "Evelyn, it's Jordan. You may want to come down." Scout, now Sage, had returned to the outer border of the preserve. Cameras had captured him pacing near the old training enclosure. Not distressed, not wounded, just present. By the time Evelyn arrived, all 3 Bobcats were there, together. They lounged near the southern fence line at dusk, gazing silently at the path Luna used to walk. "She's not well," Jordan said, motioning toward the porch. "Her hips have stiffened. She doesn't walk as far, but she saw them." "And?" Evelyn asked. She wagged her tail. Jordan smiled, eyes glistening. They brought Luna out the next morning, just as the sun crested the eastern slope. The Bobcats rose to their feet immediately. No calls, no howls, just a quiet rush forward. They pressed their bodies against the fence, tails flicking, eyes gleaming with recognition. Luna stepped forward, slowly, her body older but her spirit undimmed. She touched her nose to the mesh, and they all leaned in, not as cubs in need, not as orphans seeking a mother, but as family, unchanged by time or distance. That evening, Evelyn sat on the porch beside Luna, wrapped in a fleece blanket. The pines swayed gently, and birds called overhead. The Bobcats had disappeared again into the wild, but the moment had happened. A circle closed, a miracle confirmed. "I used to think science had to make sense," Evelyn said aloud, "but sometimes the heart leads first." Luna sighed softly beside her, and as stars emerged above the ridgeline, they sat together, rescuer and rescued, guardian and wild, watching a world forever changed by love.